Hi, I'm Jason Logson from adventure-logs.com, and this is the Flysurfer Peak4 13 meter. 1, 2, 3, let's go! But first, let's take a look at it on the ground. There he is. That's a new 13 meter Peak4 versus my own personal 3 meter Peak4. Big difference, huh? So let's talk about these peaks. What is so special about the Flysurfer Peak? Well, it is a single skin foil kite. Now what that means is there is no bottom cloth. There's no inflation. You just have the connection points and the top sail, and that's it. Why do that? Well, number one, it makes the kite significantly lighter. Number two, it makes these kites pack down to nothing. You would be amazed how small these kites will pack down. And number three, and personally to me and most of the people that fly these under a hydrofoil, is that these suckers drift really well. So Flysurfer has now made 4 generations of these peaks. It is primarily designed for a snow kite. It's meant to get you up the mountains, you can come back down. With this 4th gen though, they have added an inflatable wingtips on the side which help reduce the fluttering. And there is a new craze going on where they're using these suckers for hydrofoiling. Again, because they drift so well and they are very inexpensive. A couple downsides to the single skin concept. One, they don't relaunch very well. Unless it is really windy and you crash it just right, they're really hard to relaunch. I'll definitely be trying the 13 out on my 3 meter here. I have yet to have a very successful relaunch after a water crash, but I knew that coming into this. The sucker packs down so teeny, I just don't go very far, put myself in a situation where that could be a safety issue. But on the other hand, the wind range on these things are wonderful. They're huge. They have a wonderful wind range. They fly in next to nothing. They're just so light that it is really remarkable what kind of range and what kind of power you get for these kites. Another disadvantage of the single skin concept is they really don't have a power spike when you loop them. Now, that can be good. Lets you be a little bit more playful. This is basically a trick kite for me. I have tons of fun with it. But getting yourself out of the water onto your foil, it takes a very different type of technique than you would be used to if you have flown a normal foil kite. Landing these things are a little bit different too. I actually, on my 3 here, I like to just wind in the center lines and basically catch the kite. It depowers next to nothing. It's really easy to control the kite just by the 2 center lines. It's lots of fun. If I can, I'm going to try to do it on this 13. So let's look a little bit at the build quality. We got these plastic lines and they go all the way to about halfway through the canopy. Again, there's no air pressure to keep these things stable in shape, so they use these plastic lines to help keep its shape. But you'll notice with these kites, they flutter a lot. They flutter when they're overpowered. They fluttered when you depower them a little bit. With this latest generation and the inflatable wingtips, it's not as bad, but they do definitely flutter some. This kite has their 5th line safety, which is good on the snow. Basically, it's a line that goes from tip to tip. You pull on it, it puts them together. On my own personal 3, I don't have that set up. The only thing that I would say about that is these connectors, it'd be nice if they put a little pigtails on them so they're easier to disconnect when you disconnect your bar. Speaking of bars, Flysurfer sent this along when they asked me to demo this, and this connect bar is really impressive for Flysurfer. I've had quite a lot of their infinity bars. They all kind of ended up the same. The grip would wear off and these floaters would break. Definitely wouldn't happen here. It was actually a really nice quality bar. I actually like the tapered hand grip. It's really comfortable. I'm really impressed. I think my next bar is going to be Flysurfer again. That's pretty cool. Looking at the bridle, it's just like most of Flysurfer's foil kites. 4 levels, A, B, C, and Z. Little note, I really like it when they change the color on the Z lines. Just makes it a little bit easier to differentiate when you're unwinding the lines and whatnot. Not that big of a deal. You also has a mixer test, so you can check everything out. But unlike the other newer foils from Flysurfer, the Peak does not have the long mixer test. But these kites aren't as sensitive to bridle changes than, say, a Sonic 3. So I don't see that being an issue. 2 pulleys, pretty standard. Yeah. Okay, well there you go, a little quick down and dirty introduction and what they look like on the ground. Let's go take the 13 up in the air. Now I have a very difficult launch site. As you can see, I really don't have very much room to work with. Also, the wind needs to be just right, which doesn't really happen at this spot. Also, it's surrounded by kite-hungry trees and line-hungry rocks. And the water gets deep pretty quick, so it is definitely an advanced launch site. But the very first time I took that Peak4 13 out, I was able to launch it without problem. So that right there is a big thumbs up. First, I wanted to try out the Peak4 13 meter at the most extreme low wind side of the wind range. As you can see, the wind was basically non-existent, 5-6 knots at most on the downwind side of the lake. So it really was a good test. Now I'm 185 pounds naked. I have a Groove 100 centimeter wave board, so it's not a light wind board. You really need a big floaty board to help you water start. As I said before, these Peaks don't have a power spike on a loop. It takes a different technique. Really, instead of looping it, it's better to figure eight it to keep the kite low into the wind zone as much as possible to help get you out of the water. Once you're on foil though, it's just like any other kite. See, obviously the 13 meter turns a lot slower than the 3 meter that I'm used to, but I wouldn't call it super slow. You just have to anticipate your turns a little bit sooner for your tack, especially on the very low end of the wind range. But once you're up on foil, it acts just like every other kite. Really drama-free, set it and forget it, especially on the low end, so that kind of makes things a little bit easier. You can just concentrate more on your hydrofoiling. Well, it's a little windy for the hydrofoil, so let's see if this Peak4 can do a twin tip. Now my twin tip has quite a lot of rocker, so it needs a lot of power, so let's see what happens. Here we go. Got to try the kite on another day where the wind was blowing up to about 18 knots. I wanted to see how the kite reacted on the higher end of its wind range. I used my Nobility NHP split board, which has quite a lot of rocker, so that means it needs a lot of power to use, especially to stay upwind. The kite acted more like a normal kite. You didn't need to worry about figure eighting it to get up or anything like that. I was barely able to stay upwind. I think on a door or a flatter board, I wouldn't have had as much problems, but the kite definitely lacks in upwind abilities compared to, say, a Soul or a Sonic. Try to jump it, there's really no real lift to it, so again, kite's not designed for that. What I was most impressed though with the higher wind is the kite didn't flap as much as I expected it to. I don't know if Flysurfer made a couple tweaks with this new size or what, but it really was pretty controllable. If I just kept my hand on the bar a little bit, it really helped reduce that bouncing around, which was quite nice. I expected it to be a lot worse. For my relaunch attempt, first I tried to crash the kite by just letting go of the bar. And as you can see, it took a really long time to get the kite to even crash. That's one of the great things about the Peak4. They really are a hands-off kind of kite. They will act really well on their own. And once I finally had it crashed, I tried to use a couple different methods to relaunch the Peak. First, I tried to use something kind of like the Soul, where you just use one steering line to try to get the wingtip up for the kite to relaunch. Some people have been successful with this. You just take your time, be very patient, and it can eventually happen. That didn't work for me. I also tried the reverse launching, where you use both steering lines and try to reverse launch the kite. That also didn't work for me. Eventually, the kite finally balled up and got sunk enough where I know the relaunch wouldn't have been possible. I've been successful on my 3 meter by attaching the bar to my hydrofoil, swimming out to the kite, resetting it by just draining the water out of the wingtips, laying it on its back where the wind can catch the leading edge, swim back to my bar, snap back in, and launch. That's worked for me a couple times. I didn't try it on the 13 meter. It might have worked. Again, it's different, but buying one of these, you got to know that the relaunch is difficult at best. So there you go, the overview of the Peak4 13 meter. If you're an avid hydrofoiler, and especially if you like to hydrofoil in the waves, I highly recommend you try one of these out. It really is a completely different feel than any other kite I've ever hydrofoiled with. They're pretty inexpensive, which is really nice. You can get usually 2, maybe 3 sizes for the price of one normal foil kite. So that's really nice. Super easy to travel with because they pack down really small. So make sure you stay tuned and subscribe. My next video is going to be about my new Sonic 3 11 meter. I set it down next to a Soul 10 meter, show you the build differences, the design differences. I go over some of the things I like about the Sonic 3, a couple things that I dislike, and just again an overall review of it. It is an amazing kite. I think it's probably the highest performing kite I've had so far. So I'm pretty excited about it. It's definitely been worth the wait for this next generation. So make sure you have any questions, comments, put it below. I always appreciate any feedback, and a thumbs up always helps. And I'll see you out on the water. Thanks.